couple of weeks back, I put out a video on the revival of KDE FOSS Oxygen theme by Philip Feeler. Now, what I didn't realize at the time is who else was going to be involved in the project. Nuno Pinheiro. If you don't know the name, completely understandable, but this was the lead designer of KDE 4's Oxygen theme. So there have been changes between KDE 4 and Plasma 6, there have been new icons that need to be made, there have been UI rearrangements and structures that just didn't exist in KDE 4 that need to be adapted if you want the theme to be in Plasma 6. Now, without Nuno, you'd have to be like, okay, what would Oxygen do here? How are we going to handle this? What would an Oxygen logo look like for this thing? But with the designer there, you don't have to guess. You can just go to Nuno and say, hey, what would a dolphin icon look like? Here's a dolphin icon, and there are other designers involved as well, but having that original voice there is really, really big. But did you know, following the original KDE 4 Oxygen theme, which was swapped out as the default when Breeze came in with KDE 5, with Plasma 5, so back in 2013, 2014, somewhere around that time, and before the current revival happening in 2026, Nuno was actually working on another theme. This was being worked on back in 2020 and was being documented on his blog post, on his Instagram, and his now since deleted Twitter. We're going to focus on the blog because it's a blog and that works quite well. Week 0 report. This is what he was working on. Now, obviously, colors probably would have been configurable and things like that, but this was a look that he was trying to go for. This was Oxygen squared. Ultimately, it never really went past the design stage, and we'll get to why a bit later. But before that, let's just go through some of the development and some of the ways that this theme was going to look. The week surprisingly started Monday. Wow, what a strange day to start your week. And after the initial shock and accompanying usual work day at KDAB, I decided to do a little bit of progress on the Oxygen squared style mockups. Started with progress bars in both radius variants, tan, both sizes. I'm pretty sure English is not his first language, so there's going to be some mistakes. Also, this is a personal blog, not something that is like, you know, professionally structured, so there's going to be a bunch of weird spelling mistakes, and I'm going to try to make sense of them. Anyway, both size variants as well, and both color testing variants. It's okay in my opinion, but need to test implementation in QML to be sure about it. Specifically on the white variation, it looks off. So this is obviously the dark version, and this right here is the light version also being worked on, because by this point, this was in 2020, people expect there to be both a light and a dark variant, even though it is pretty obvious that the dark variant was the primary focus. I'm not sure if this is being destroyed by the video compression, but go directly to the page. This background color isn't a flat background color. It's not just flat gray. There is random noise in the image as well. The same thing is true for the light version as well. This is something you just don't really see from modern UI design. Even now, like, let alone in 2020, in the middle of everything must be flat design, even now you don't really see this. It gives a bit of a textured look to the image without it being this really complex thing to create. It's sort of somewhere in between the minimal design we still see now and, you know, what you got back in the days of Oxygen. I don't think we're ever going to go back all the way to that sort of skeuomorphic design we had in the past, but I do think moving away from that, like, flat, really material design is probably for the best. Wednesday was first test / mockup with a spinner, more on that on Saturday. Tuesday was the day I started to experiment with old desktop style check and radio boxes, which was a work in progress. They don't pop much, and it was intentional, but need to balance it with other elements, another one that needs to be in QML. Honestly, I do like the checkboxes. I think the radio buttons, this I prefer. This one here, I'm not a fan of the large look. I think making the circle, like the inner circle, expand with the size of the outer circle probably would have been better. Friday was the day I worked on Soundwave notifications for assistance. Seemed like a great idea for my brain, but I'm not sure I like it after all this time. 2 days is a very long time. Facepalm emoticon. I don't know. Obviously, it's like with the color choice being here with the purple and blue. I actually think that looks pretty good on the Soundwave. I don't know how well it works for the button though. I feel like a lot of that color is sort of disappearing, and it feels a lot more muted in a way that doesn't really fit in with the rest of the UI elements. But surprisingly, I don't hate the light variation. I don't know how well this works. I like, light's always a weird one when you're doing light colors because things just don't pop as much. But I do think having this inner play button being brighter than the background, because the background isn't white, it's a very light gray. This, I think, makes the elements stand out quite a bit more than if you had the entire background being white. This, I think, is a major, major difference to what you see nowadays, where oftentimes backgrounds are just white as white can be, and it's a little bit off-putting. In some cases, you do see a bit of a blue shift, but that's a more modern thing you are seeing, and still isn't consistent, and I don't think really alleviates the problem. I think not being pure white is basically all you can do with a light theme. Not as much as something like Cosmic. I think Cosmic, their gray has gone a little bit too far. Here's a bit of a very badly compressed and low resolution video example. Here we go. It's kind of hard to tell with how badly compressed it is, but I do think that's a really neat looking spinner. I don't know, I think if you're doing a color spinner and you're not just doing what Apple did with the rainbow, it's really hard to get something that looks good. I don't know, this, like, the use of color, it's a very difficult concept because you can conceptually understand which colors work well together, but that's a different question to what actually looks good. As I said, this work was taking place in 2020. This is about 6 years after Plasma 5 and Breeze, and quite a bit longer after the beginning of the thing that just psyoped every single designer, and I still get it today, into thinking the only way to design a good-looking interface is to do flat design. This is actually why I like Nuno Pinheiro. He was actually trying things. He was actually being a designer instead of a trend chaser, which is what you see from, not just in the Linux world, basically everybody. As soon as material design came out and Google said, flat design is the way we do things, everybody just said, oh, okay, I guess all of this design we were doing before, that was bad now. And you'll actually hear designers try to make the argument that things like skeuomorphic design and all of the other design languages had over the years is bad because there are design teams that decided that this is the better way to design things. No, they decided to design it this way because that was how you optimize for user engagement. And also, it's cheap to do that flat material design because it requires way less designing of things. Sorry, I should make a separate video about just how much I not necessarily hate flat design, because I like flat design to some extent, but how much that just psyoped everyone into thinking nothing else was a good idea, and stepping outside that boundary, you were considered a crazy person for doing anything like this. And that's a big part of the reason why I'm excited for the revival of Oxygen. Yes, maybe it's not going to become the main theme. Yes, maybe it's not something you're going to use. But it's something different. And it's something different by being something old. Anyway, let's move on to the next week of work. In a nutshell, did some stuff, then done it again, was happy with parts of it, and finally ended the week on a positive note with a talk at CuteCon Brazil 2020. Here you might get a much better look at the kind of noise that is being used in the background. I think this is a different kind of noise. New version of Lights BG using extra noise generated from the two... yeah, okay. So this is a new version using the color set. So the purple and the blue to sort of integrate it together. I don't know how well this would work with an actual interface, but I certainly don't hate it. Made some progress in the internal rules for palette generation. As I've said, one of my prime objectives is to be able to create extremely simple palettes with no more than 5 to 7 colors. That area is able to be translated into a fully working palette, something I plan to start testing in QML next week. On that note, more work on the QML components that test the mockups and animate the features. Notice the progress bar, deal with smaller values. Okay, there we go. Why do you not cut out the first part of the video? Okay, there we go. Okay, there we go. I think those look nice. I actually do think those look nice. Maybe this one, it might just be the video encoding, but it seems like it's a little bit jumpy. It could also be the way the mock-up's being done. I don't think the smaller bars work, and this is just a problem with having something too thin. I think the text touching the edges, I don't think that works. But if you made the font smaller, then it comes a point where the font is just not readable. I think if you're going to use these bars, only the larger size here would be viable. Maybe you could shrink these down a little bit, but definitely not this much. On to the next one, design done. Hello again. So I believe I am 90% done with the base style direction and main UI components for Oxygen Squared, and I'm currently struggling with my not so bright idea of dynamic QML color palettes. Still, overall, I'm happy with the general visual direction of the UI style. It's, in my opinion, clearly derivative of Oxygen, but today. Now, having done 90% of the design and doing the serious work, I know that the solemn work that will take far, far more time is upon me and us. Now, he says us, but at this point, he was the only person actually working on the design. After that, I have to do something even more difficult. That is to find a icon style that does the same as the UI style above, bring to today, Oxygen of yesterday, and fix any of its issues. After a few months, there wasn't really any progress being made, and eventually we got to this post here. Do you like code? Do you like art? Do you love KDE? In the past few years, there's been a bit of coverage on this theme, and for some reason, people seem to think that this was outright rejected by KDE, and that's why this never went anywhere. But that's not what happened. The main reason here is Nuno Pinheiro is a designer, and you need C++ to be able to implement a full KDE theme. Also, if you have experience in Kirigami/plasma styling, designers are welcome as well. If you do, then welcome, and he had a telegram at the time for working on this project. On one of those videos, notably this notoriously AI-generated channel, Nate Graham said this: KDE didn't reject the Oxygen Squared style, it lost momentum before there was anything to evaluate. I believe Nuno didn't find a developer willing to make it happen, which introduces the real problem here. Themes as code makes developers a bottleneck to design. It's really hard to find a competent designer who is also a competent developer. They do exist, but usually a full theme ends up being at least a two-person effort. KDE is actively working on a new theming engine, Union, that lets themes be defined in CSS without the need for any C++ programming. It's our hope this makes it easier to design changes that everyone does like and want, so they don't fizzle out for the lack of a developer. The main problem with Union right now is the feature set isn't one-to-one with doing things with the C++, at least doing the main things that people want to do, so it's just not a full solution yet, but it is moving in that direction. The repo for Oxygen Squared does still exist, and if you do want to happen to get involved in it, hey, go fork it. No one's really properly working on it anymore, but if you want to go and continue on the legacy, maybe go and implement the designs that are already done, hey, that would be awesome. But let me know, do you think Oxygen Squared had anything going for it? Do you think it looked neat? Do you think it kind of deserved to not really go anywhere? I would love to know. So, let me know your thoughts down below. If you liked the video, go like the video. And if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe, Stelly Bearer Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and Brodie squared.
Daytime better call correct. Ain't playing at your best, then you will get left. If it don't involve money, then I don't accept. If it don't involve money, then I don't accept.